Hey there, welcome to episode 65 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, a show where we talk about entrepreneurialism, innovation, our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem here in the greater Vegas area, and maybe other stuff too. Today, once again, we are going to speak about one of the projects that we're driving, our own little startup. So why not speak to the founder, who happens to be your host? That's me, Dan Hugo. This is another part of a couple week long series. I think this is the fourth episode in a little mini series that focuses on this public media information sharing platform that we're working on. And so this recording taking place just around 1 p.m. on the 24th of May, 2024. That's a Friday. Happy Friday. We do try to publish the shows every Friday. If we have guests, we may not record it on Friday, and sometimes I like to record it the night before, but here we are. My voice continues to enjoy the seasonal, whatever it is that's in the air in Vegas, nuclear testing, whatever else. So if my voice starts to go wacky, don't be surprised. Today's episode, some practicality. And that, again, is in the context of the media sharing platform project that we're building a business around. And I will remind everybody that the project itself is a civic volunteer-driven open source project that is being maintained by the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, of which I am the managing director. So there isn't quite a conflict of interest just yet, although we will probably take next week, maybe next week, maybe the week after, and talk about some governance ideas, because a local information sharing project does better when there isn't one person running the whole show. X, Facebook, etc. So a community-focused information sharing platform should have some governance from the community, some public access to the switches. The content that's published should not be the result of one person or an elite group that decides that person should be silenced, or that a particular topic should be verboten, etc. So outside of the normal COPA requirements and protection of public, personally identifying information, PII, and DMCA and copyright and so on. So there are actual rules to follow. But when it comes to should we be talking about a particular issue? Should we be sharing information about a particular thing? Should we be letting, quote unquote, letting? I'm not a fan of that word in this context, certainly. Should we be enabling data, commentary, general participation from a particular individual or group or whatever? Well, these are things that should not be left to one dictator, benevolent or otherwise. So we'll probably touch on that. I'm really itching to talk about the Formula One lawsuits and whatnot. So we might take a break to revisit the fun economy, spelled F1UN, as we ramp up already for November 2024. All that said, let us talk about some practicality in today's episode about, I think I've shared the name of it, the In Las Vegas program, platform. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you have access to the episode description. There are show notes. I have several links this week, a lot of PDFs, unfortunately, but they're interesting. And the fact that they exist might not always be a known fact. That should change right away. They're not hidden, but they're not really publicized, as is the case with a lot of things in the greater Vegas area, and that could be true where you are if you are not listening in Vegas. So let's get started then. The summary of today's episode: some practical examples that might make a city-scale information sharing platform useful and interesting, and maybe even successful. That would be nice. Too many possibilities in the blue sky. I can't cover everything, and I can't even cover the examples I will give today in great detail. Showing and not telling is the way to go. So this is merely a cursory overview. a taste, if you will. The link section will begin, as always, with shameless self-promotion. I, your host, have my 2 coffee-related promotional tools. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo is that first one. As always, it's a profile page on which I have links to my various audio productions, and that may expand. I keep teasing this, but I don't even have the time to put the websites up for the individual projects. So at present, the links are to the Spotify for Podcasters sort of portal page. Not ideal, but functional. The audio episodes are actually available in more places than are listed there. The nature of podcasting is there's an expression that Anil Dash at Feedly used. I believe it was the title of an article he wrote, wherever you find your podcasts. And you'll hear people say that because the podcasting world is very, or maybe ahead of the curve a little bit, was very decentralized. So you could publish your audio program in one place and it would show up in Apple iTunes, Amazon Podcasts. That does 2 things for the world. One, it makes a particular audio program, a particular channel or series or episodes available to more people on more platforms. So Apple can fill in their iTunes store. Google can kill off yet another platform with the end of Google Podcasts, but add more stuff to YouTube, which is what they're doing. And so it allows for more content to be available pretty quickly and easily on even commercial platforms like Spotify and iTunes and YouTube, and the list goes on. Amazon Podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. So it's easy enough to be found in various places, and that makes it easy for people who only use iTunes to listen to the show, et cetera. But it does make for something of a headache for content creators, publishers, including myself, where you have to kind of keep up with where your feeds are being replicated. Do I need to sign up for Apple iTunes? I guess we show up in iTunes, but we're not validated or confirmed or whatever it is. So there's a sign up process that you provide a credit card as proof of existence or something. So yeah, the podcasting world is a little chaotic, which in some case, so the second case is that more people have, so in the first of the 2 items, distribution platforms and services like iTunes can add to their catalog of available programs, and thus, appeal to more people who use iTunes to stay on iTunes to listen to music or to listen to podcasts. And look, we have all of the podcasts. And Apple was fairly, I'll say important. I was going to say instrumental, but certainly important in early adoption. It's right there in the name, podcast, based on the iPod. Adam Curry, Steve Jobs, probably smoked a joint, had a nice discussion about calling it something with pod in it, the whole concept. So yeah, Apple's been an early adopter anyway. But I diverge. I'm going way off topic here. So buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. You do not need to buy me a coffee. You can if you want, but there's no obligation. I just use it as a sort of a third-party, kind of a free-form link tree, if you're familiar with those. So I have the profile page there. I have links to things. I can add some commentary. I have a list of my favorite coffee beans. Only if people are curious. If I give you money, well, that's where it goes. The stated destination for funds received through either buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo or coffee.com/DanHugo. That's ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Any monies that come in through those go towards coffee, which is what powers these various projects. I don't have any immediate plans to try to monetize these otherwise, although I reserve the right to change my mind. What is it worth to you? That kind of thing. Anyway, the other site, as I've already said, coffee.com/DanHugo, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. That will serve as a kind of an announcement path for once I get our websites up for my 4 weekly audio program productions. Those are separate channels, separate shows, separate content, one overworked host. And I still have my other stuff to do. So, and some of those other things are also listed on the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile, and more should appear there. Although what we are talking about today will also be another way to try to promote content creators, which I'll get to. And now a collection of documents. These are, I think in all cases, all cases are prepared by highly paid consultants. That's the best way to get papers written. You should, if you're a student, you should try it. No, I'm just kidding. The first one is Mapping the Future. It's from 2020. So published on the heels of the beginning of the lockdown. So that means that certainly things have changed, perhaps. It's a Clark County document. It was prepared by SRI. You can visit all these documents. They're publicly available. They're county or city documents, or in the case of Empowering Entrepreneurship, the next one, it was prepared for the state, even though it was funded by, I think mainly, or it was driven by EDON, which is the LVGEA equivalent, but in Washoe County, Reno, Clark County area. So the Mapping the Future is a document about Clark County and what it has to offer for communities and the economy. And my interest in that initially, the way I came across it, was I was searching for any examination, any analysis of an asset map for the Greater Vegas area. I use Greater Vegas to mean a lot of Clark County or a lot of Southern Nevada. I don't know that the Greater Vegas area has a specific boundary, but if you only say Clark County, or you only say City of Las Vegas or City of Henderson, unincorporated Clark County, then you may run into implications about boundaries, which can then become issues of budget, or who's paying for what and which people or entities are included and so on. So Greater Vegas is purposely vague. It could be a lot of people. It could be all the way out to Rancho Cucamonga if you're on the train, the Brightline West, coming to you or coming to me. That it's an interesting document. It's dated 2020. A lot has changed in the intervening, I think 4 years. I think it was published in it was published in late 2020. So say call it 3 years, but data was collected and references are from data more than 3 years ago. So let's be generous and say 3 years, but published late in 2020. But really, we're thinking based on data from 3 to 5, maybe even more years ago. So worth a quick read though, and especially page 29, asset map. Get some feel for that, because I have a very different take on how we could do that. Empowering Entrepreneurship is a document prepared for EDON. As I said, we actually had the main researcher. There were several people participating on her side from her company, and then there were people from each locality that were part of a in-person canvas survey, etc. But Empowering Entrepreneurship, I did have Mo Collins, that she was the consultancy principal and lead on the research. We had her on an episode of this very program back in a little over a year ago. It was the end of April 2023. You can listen to that episode, although while I did read the entire report ahead of time, it's 101 pages, including the cover, so 100 pages. And even then, a little bit less than 100. Even she said, it's very long. It's kind of a slog to get through. So I don't know if she was very proud of it, but we had an interesting conversation. It being a part one, I was not overly critical. Since then, so in the past year, I've not really revisited the document specifically, but many of the points raised, I would revisit in a part 2 interview and point out that there was a severe selection bias, there was severe motivated reasoning, there was use of outdated, or what I would say is somewhat questionable data from Deal Room, which is not the most up-to-date resource. I find this a lot when I look at when people build tools based on data sources that they just accept. And by way of example, I will say I was looking at the Best Food Trucks platform. I know the person who founded it, so I'm not going to be overly critical. I'm not trying to change the topic for today, but I'm also pointing out another example. When they constructed the Las Vegas directory of food trucks, this is common practice in the food truck app builder biz. I will remind anyone who's not aware, I don't really talk about this too much, but I did found two owners associations. One, the Bay Area Mobile Food Vendors Association, in collaboration with the Southern California Mobile Food Vendors Association. The founder of SoCal MFVA is the principal at Best Food Trucks. So that's how I know Matt. And then the Nevada Mobile Vendors Association, which kind of did not survive the pandemic. That was some chaos. But either way, when you build a platform, a directory, and a booking tool or whatever, because I've done this, and it will make a return, as this will show up later in my notes here. You have two choices. You can either ask people to sign up, and there's another local food truck finding tool developed here. The principal lives in Henderson, I think. He started off by just signing people up. So you can say, hey, would you like to sign up for my platform? So I watched him do this. He would go to food truck events here in the Vegas area and say, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll sign you up. You get a free trial, all that. So he was very aggressively signing people up for free. And then they stop using it because they don't see the value. They don't want to pay. So in that model, I'm not even going to reference the site because it's dumb. Mobile vendors who no longer update their location and their schedule. It's not even a schedule. It's an event start and end time and location. If you don't update it, a little icon for where you were last time stays on the map. So it's deceivingly crowded, but it's all gray because they're closed. So it's a little misleading. The other option is to just vacuum up all references to mobile vendors. So you look through Instagram. It used to be Twitter. Maybe you look on Facebook, but you basically just start capturing vendors. So you grab a picture, you grab the name of the vendor, and you grab their social media links, and then there's nothing else. There's no schedules and whatnot. So I literally looked about 2 days ago. I was curious to see how the Las Vegas establishment of Best Food Trucks was going. I actually hope Best Food Trucks does well here. I don't think they will, but it would be cool if they did. The presence of food truck entries in their catalog, any company that does this always says, we have our food trucks. I don't care for that terminology, but they have a catalog of food trucks. I found multiple instances of food trucks or trailers or mobile vendors in general who are no longer in business, but they're in their catalog. So Best Food Trucks has only entered the Vegas marketplace within the last, I'll say 1 year. It's been less than a year, but in the last 1 year. Some of the vendors I found have been closed for years, multiple years. So it's sloppy and not useful. And so something similar happens when you build a document like Empowering Entrepreneurship on old data. I have found that LVGEA, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, also has a resources directory of sorts, and some of the information there is outdated. So we have outdated content information, and I'll get to why I think that is. City of Las Vegas master plan for 2050. That's just going to be a good read if you are in the greater Vegas area, particularly in the city of Las Vegas. So many people confuse City of Las Vegas with Clark County, unincorporated Clark County, other counties, Southern Nevada in general. Like, I'm in Laughlin. Does that mean I'm in Vegas? Sort of. But the master plan has a lot of interesting things. I participated in some master plan development, I guess, when I lived in the city of Sunnyvale, California. There was a really interesting component of it called the LUT, the land use and transportation element of the city master plan. In California, cities are required to create master plan, 10-year master plans. They're required by law. So they have to submit to the state or county a master plan with all sorts of required elements, including this one. So the Vegas plan has land use, and it has transportation, has other things of use. I definitely recommend, if you are familiar with, if you're planning to visit, or if you already live in the greater Vegas area, that you do check that out. Casual reading. Perhaps if you're in the restroom for more than a few minutes, you can flip through a few pages. The City of Las Vegas Smart City Forward document from 2019, which I have made reference to a few times in the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. So part of our Innovate for Vegas Foundation project planning was to look at what the current plans were for Smart City. The tagline for Innovate for Vegas Foundation, one of them is let's make our smart city smarter, or making our smart city smarter, or making a smarter smart city. Yeah, variations on that theme. So knowing what the plans were was, of course, interesting. The Smart City Forward document is very pretty. All these documents are prepared by external consultancies, what we in my business call highly paid consultants. Maybe you call them that as well, the HPCs. So the Smart City Forward document has some interesting things. I call them checkbox projects. So they're checkboxes. You check it off. There's a Go Vegas application in your iPhone or Android application store. What is it? The iTunes store or the Play Store, I guess. They are mobile applications that have been in development for like 10 years, and they're awful. They've been installed thousands of times, like 10,000 times, which is outlandish. I can't believe people would install it, but I don't believe that people didn't delete it. It's a checkbox project. So it's a line item. It gets a check mark by it, and they move on to other things. Some of the items that are in this the Smart City Forward plan document are useful. A lot of them actually, in one way or another, are to be found. Some of them involve connectivity, so networks, and there's been a substantial network infrastructure build out closer to downtown, closer to City Hall. Thanks to BEAD funding from the federal government, there's been a larger build out of fiber and probably Gen 5 cellular mobile data. So some of those things are in there, and they are actually deployed. Some of them are good. Some of them are kind of, like I said, checkbox projects. So City of Las Vegas Smart City Forward is actually worth flipping through. There's a couple of pages with the list of items that I've mentioned. A lot of it's fluff, kind of justification of the fee charged by the highly paid consultants, no doubt. But all these documents I've linked to are useful. Skimming through, the Empowering Entrepreneurship covers Southern Nevada in the, I think it's in the final third, the third, and it does cover the state, and then Washoe, Clark counties, and the middle rural areas of Nevada. So I think we're the third for Southern Nevada. And I know that I'm on page 66. If you are a fan and you want to see that I'm a ESO, an entrepreneur support organization, just me by myself, I can do all that. I'm listed amongst an unsavory cast of characters, though, so I don't know if me being in there is a good thing. But here's a fun fact. I appeared in that document. I had never spoken to anyone, Mo or otherwise, from her company. I was listed, and then I was asked afterward some information about me and what I'm doing for the biographical information. So I was already to be listed not knowing anything about me. So this is another reason to call some of these things into question. I would really love locally produced research, so locally sourced data, locally produced analysis and publication of data, so that the people involved are here. They have an actual interest, not only in being reasonably precise and accurate, but also in kind of owning the outcome, and then maybe possibly revisiting, tuning, correcting, adjusting, etc. It's not a one and done. So that's some of what we'll talk about today. There's a quick link I have on, of all places, data.gov. the home of open data notions, concepts, etc. It's called data versus information. Fun fact, data and information are different things. Data you can gather. If I roll a allegedly fair die, one of a pair of dice, you can find these anywhere in Vegas pretty much. If I roll a one die one time, I have a data point. I know what it was a 5. Okay. If I roll it 100 times, I'll have 100 data points. If I roll it 1,000 times, 1,000 data points, etc. The information comes when I analyze those 1,000 million data points, and I say, okay, what's the distribution of roll results? So, it looks pretty fair because we're getting an equal number within error bars, right? You should have an equal distribution of each of the 6 sides of the die. So 1 and 6, and every number in between should be equally likely. Over 1 million rolls, you'll probably get pretty close to that. Over 6 rolls, you shouldn't. So the analysis and the information comes when you have sufficient data on which to base a reasonable interpretation, an analysis, to publish information about a particular die. You can say, okay, based on our 1 million rolls, and maybe do weighing and measuring and so on, this is a fair die. So the information is this is a fair die. The data is the rolls and the dimensions and the compliance with specs on what a fair die should be, etc. So similarly, capturing data and publishing information, there are at least 2 steps in between there to capture and then sort of we'll say smooth the data. Try to get rid of outliers, try to account for things that seem erroneous, bogus. Sometimes people like to make extra submissions or try to be funny. So you clean your data so it is useful, and then you analyze it so you can apply statistical analysis and other means of determining how the data looks mathematically, logically, and you come up with conclusions that are your information, like what is the real distribution of business license activity. So what kinds of businesses are in which kinds of areas, and do they align with regional demographics, regional access to resources? So you can start correlating the during your analysis, correlate, what are the correlations and then the causalities, perhaps causations. So the information comes from this analysis and the correlation analysis, causality analysis. I say causality because that's the word we used in college. Causation, I think, is more popular. Correlation, causation, they kind of sound nice. So yeah, data versus information. It's a paragraph, but it kind of, if you are curious about this, you can dive into it more. I've given only the most cursory examples here. CLV, City of Las Vegas. There's a GeoCommons. These are projects that were the start of Code for Vegas about 12 years ago. So there's a GeoCommons data set. The next link is for the Open Data Portal sort of homepage. Also, these are hosted on ArcGIS, ARCGIS. And then there's an LVMPD Open Data Portal, also hosted on ArcGIS. Now, LVMPD used to publish their data on a site called Crime Mapping, and then they suddenly didn't, and it looked like, ooh, all crime has been solved in Vegas. So they moved all this over, I want to say like January 2022, maybe. They didn't really announce it. It was pretty quiet. So if you're a kind of a data nerd, you would notice, which I did. I was like, hey, how come there's no more crime? And they said, oh, we moved all of our data over to ArcGIS. So now it's published as open data, which is very useful. There are stated policies about data access and who owns it and so on. So open data is very useful if you want to build applications, say, comparing incident reports to anything else, right? You can take this pieces of data from the open data portals of any of the ones I mentioned. GeoCommons is about mapping data, so administrative boundaries, where are business licenses located, where are parking lots, where are different there's a streetlight data set there. There's a lot of data in there. So today we're not talking about all that data. I did do an audio program in Let's Innovate for Vegas with then both of the data management people that were in charge of the open data sets and keeping them up to date and functional. Now we're down to one. So Anthony still works for the city of Las Vegas. Hopefully he's still around as I'm speaking right now. I haven't heard from him in a little while. But the open data infrastructure was the origin story of Code for Vegas. Fun fact. So do check out these open data sets in your travels. I'm mentioning today because I don't think people do check them out. And so some of the things that we talk about, some of the things we hear about in the news, there's some of the things you read about on Nextdoor if you're really into self-abuse. Nextdoor, kind of an awful website, but often people will make reference to an incident. Well, they'll say something happened, and then the question is, did you call the police? What they could do is provide an incident report number, which is part of the open data sets, and you can say, this happened, and this is where it happened. And if anybody has any other information, they can actually contact your local command, your Northwest Area Command where I am, or you can call the police, reference an incident, and say, I think I saw something. You shouldn't post witness information or incident information or replace contacting law enforcement with ranting on Nextdoor or any other social media platform. So making real references to real data helps to build information from that data. So that's the extent of the links for today. There is more. There's plenty of more. There's plenty of open data, not always published as open data in these data sets, but there are plenty of pieces of data floating around, some of them in the form of humans. And we will get to that. So let's kick off the show, today's episode, with a little rant on static documents in these dynamic times. So I've given the document links, the PDFs that I've linked to, the Mapping the Future, the Empowering Entrepreneurship, the Master Plan, the Smart City Forward. Those are the four. Those are PDF documents that are published at a point in time. As recently as, I think the Master Plan came out 2 years ago. I'm not looking at it right now. I think that's the most recent. The Mapping the Future is from 2020. Oh no, either way, these are published between 2020 and now. They are 2019, Smart City Forward, published on those dates. However, that doesn't mean they are current when they're published. The data that's captured, the analysis that's performed and published, the Mapping the Future document for Clark County has a lot of anecdotes about the asset map, but doesn't really show it literally as a map, like what's the geographical distribution of some of the resources they spell out. They also really didn't focus on the personalities that are part of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So they were really focused on tangible capital assets, I guess you could say. So really we want to know things like they have education, but we want to know where educators are, educational resources that may or may not be schools, but we also want to know about individuals who are mentors, who are tutors, who are providing additional, maybe apprenticeship style trainings. They're taking the time and expressing their expertise in the form of a collaborative meetup or maybe an actual class, maybe online engagements, maybe tutoring, maybe homework helps, homework hotline, I think is, I don't know if we still have that around in Vegas, but these are the sorts of things that are not always on the radar, but that can be valuable. They should be included in an asset map, which tells you what's going on in your entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. The ecosystem itself, kind of chugs along. Some things will thrive, some things will not. And you can actually try to determine what's working and what is not in your ecosystem by observing on your asset map which things are emerging, which things are working, which things are fading away. Like, hey, how can we have fewer people, individuals participating in different types of innovation activities, et cetera, in our Greater Vegas region? So asset map, you can take literally as a map of data, but you can also take it as a granular tabulated data database of individuals, of resources. How many maker spaces are there? How many playgrounds are there? They do have a map of parks, walking distance, I guess, walkable parks, and areas of the Greater Vegas region that may be lacking, but you can actually become very granular with that. Every person who would want to participate in a survey to create that component or that element of an asset map could say, I live in this region. You don't need to know exactly where they live. You can say, I live in this grid, in this hex, depending on if you're using a grid system or the H3 hexagonal system or maybe something else. So I'm in this general area, and that means I am ambulatory, right? So people who have cars, that's a different consideration. So can I walk outside my door? Do I require a wheelchair? There might be some questions about accessibility. Is the path between me and a park improved sidewalks? Is there proper ramp and accessibility considerations? Are they compliant with the ADA requirements that go into that? So you can actually take these measurements at that level. It sounds crazy, but that's what computers are for. And we have a public that can engage with TikTok. They can also engage with their smart city, right? If it was truly smart. So these long reports are very impressive. They're very pretty. They're very expensive. They are a point in time assessment. Even the master plan for 2050, anything can change at any time. If the Smart City Forward document published in 2019, it was January of 2019, just over 1 year later, the entire economy of the city of the Greater Vegas region was thrown a bit of a wrench concerning lockdowns and limited travel and limited tourism and so on. So a point in time is interesting, but it's not necessarily representative of the next point in time. Certainly there'll be changes. And what I found in the loot when I was participating with the City of Las Vegas Master Plan project, I was working with the planning division of the City of Sunnyvale. Did I say Las Vegas? Sunnyvale, California. I did ask at one point, do you ever go through the planning that you do 10 years in the future? Do you ever look at the planning you did maybe a year from now and you see where things are deviating so you can correct, like mid-course corrections and whatnot? She thought this was hilarious. So I don't know that cities actually do that, but if you have dynamic data, you can actually literally see that things are going off the plan, right? So something to think about. They may or may not be by the time the time frame indicated or described comes into view. In some cases, data sources used in the research and preparation of reports is not current. I found this to be true in at least one explicitly. Some of the data that was appearing there was just out of date. It was old. It was probably inaccurate. And I will say that I found something similar, as I already indicated, with LVGEA online resource directory that I checked out probably a year ago at this point. It wasn't, I'm sure I'll go back eventually as part of the integration with what we're describing today. But generally speaking, it is very easy to create one document one time and publish it and then be done and not go back, just like the City of Sunnyvale loot. You go, is this still correct 1 year later? And it may be hilarious then too. So in at least one explicit incident or instance I could point to, but I'm going to suggest that when you have an outside consultancy, if you ask someone who lives in an area, I live here, I am interested in the goings on. And when I create a report and I do my analysis, you can come and knock on my door virtually, hopefully, and you can ask me, like, is this still correct? Or is this data source current? And I might say, oh, you know what? You're right. And we can fix that or we can correct it. Because if I live here, I have an actual interest. You can say reputationally, but just as from a human standpoint, like this data should be correct because it affects me as much as anyone else. Maybe somewhere in there, somewhere within the error bars. So it's probably important for multiple reasons. If a local researcher, like you'll see this when you go talk to the Economic Development Department or Department of Economic Development or whatever they call it. over at UNLV, and maybe you talk to Beau Bernard, and he'll tell you all sorts of things about the pending trademark of fun economy. By the time it's August 2024, it will have been 2 years. It's been pending. It's been accepted and is pending approval, but they have trademarked. They've applied and are awaiting the final granting of a trademark for fun economy. And so Beau Bernard has been talking about that quite a bit. He is all in on the fun economy. And as I've said before, I don't necessarily agree with Beau Bernard as a leader in the local entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem per se, but I do agree with his assessment that the fun economy is a substantial component of the overall economy here. So it should not be taken lightly. It should also not be put at risk by believing that gentrification as a result of being the next Silicon Valley, which will never happen, would be a good thing. You'd put at risk any of your fun economy day-to-day business operations, service industry, hospitality in general, any aspect of the fun economy sort of depends on working class people being a part of it, enabling it, and empowering the visitors to enjoy themselves, have fun when you're here. So the fun economy, not to be taken lightly. Beau Bernard can be taken lightly, but the fun economy is a real thing, and it's probably here to stay, and that's should not be treated as something we can simply replace overnight. And the pandemic was certainly education in that regard. Go a couple months without tourism, without people going to restaurants and bars and so on, and the importance of the fun economy can be felt and easily visualized. Has it been easily visualized? Well, that might be something we add to our list today. In Connected Times, by the way, I'm not going to point out which of the papers I've linked here, but I would, if I was given an opportunity to ask questions about that particular item or entire reports, and I would have questions about all of these documents, but that will probably not happen until we have a substantial information sharing platform in place. Then we'll invite people to speak to the masses. In our Connected Times, a lot of people have a mobile device and access to wired or wireless connectivity to the internets. And there is a fraction of our population that does not, and those people should not be left out. It would be useful, it would be critical to know how much of your population is being excluded because of a lack of access to technology, for whatever reason, economic or otherwise. We are not reaching out to the people who live here. We are paying external consultancies to go through. If you look at the Mapping the Future document for Clark County, that first link I said, there's a substantial bibliography. There's a substantial set of references at the end of the document, links to all manner of information sources that were used in the compilation of this report. Those are probably more useful than the report itself. So it would be useful to track down where they got some of the asset map data, some of the parks data, all the other stuff that's in there. So so they really just provided a search engine result page, a curated one, but I think that's the actual value. But we live in a connected generation era. We could actually ask people who live here what they are seeing at any given time and make use of that data in, I won't say real time, but certainly more frequently than every few years. I jokingly tell people the Regional Transit Commission in Southern Nevada announced, I want to say like 6 months ago, they were performing their 10-year rider survey every 10 years. And I said, we should be doing that every 10 minutes. You can literally, and because the RTC SNV has an entire website and multiple applications to install and multiple paths to actually getting rider feedback, you could be asking real and useful information about, especially in a place with so many detours, road construction, event detours, various issues, whether the driver crashed into a building, true story, whether there was somebody stabbed on a bus, true story, multiple true stories, unfortunately, Oh, that driver got arrested for a DUI. True story. Uh, that's not funny. Or maybe they're just delays or buses that are routes that require more accessible buses that can carry people in wheelchairs or scooters, and whether those are impinging on like in full vehicle situations, right? Because you have to fold up seating and whatnot. So knowing these things and keeping up with them, not in real time, but in 10, 20-minute windows, surveying every day, every 10 years is ridiculous. So the same thought process can apply to anything that you find in these documents I've linked to, and even in the open data sets that I've linked to. I've only linked to the portal pages, so you can drill down into given data sets. You can see the update dates. So what happens in those cases is each individual data set has like an owner. So if you look at the business license data, which I've looked at recently, there's like 116,700, I think, entries. Fun fact, my own LLC, which has a valid current business license in city of Las Vegas and is a Nevada business, licensed Nevada LLC, not listed, not included in the data set for business licenses in the greater Vegas area. So the city of Las Vegas manages the data, but the data comes from the individual licensing offices of Clark County, city of Las Vegas, city of North Las Vegas, city of Henderson, probably city of Boulder City. So you can actually look and see the expanse of all these business licenses. However, if a business owner doesn't even know they're in there, they don't know whether the information is correct, and there's no real mechanism for making those corrections. So if I have my business license in the city of Las Vegas business licensing office and it's not listed in this data set, I might be inclined to take the time to try to figure that out. That would require interaction with a city office of patients. So I could do that. Is it valuable to me? No, not really. Should it be? Yeah, probably. Should it be easier for me to provide like a check on that? Like suppose I can connect my business and its business license status, for example, so I can publish it in a public data set, which is not as, it's not official. It's not curated by the city, by the staff of one that manages our open data sets for the city of Las Vegas, Anthony. But it may be available as public data, which maybe is maintained by the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, or who knows. That is a governance question to be addressed. But if we correlate the official published open data with the crowdsourced, or in this case, individual sourced public data, you could literally say, hey, one is missing from the other, right? It appears in this place, but not in that place. You could correlate things like ownership demographics, business conditions, feedback, customer access, like business practices. I'm sorry, not practices, business. How would I describe that? What I'm getting at here is, suppose you had business license data for all the businesses that were near, adjacent, impacted by construction for some giant event in around November of 2023. You could literally have status that they would provide for things like loss of business due to construction, loss of business due to foot traffic path alterations, loss of business due to reduction in tourism because of construction anywhere, these kinds of things. So you can actually not only provide a check on the on the open data, which is published, but also on public data, which is not officially curated, but which could be curated individually or by the crowd as a check, but also as a connection between official data and individually provided status, feedback, survey, commentary. The commentary may not have been kid-friendly, but there are opportunities to connect dynamic data and dynamic people and business conditions and so on, and not rely on statically created documents prepared by highly paid consultants they don't have an interest here otherwise. Maybe a reputation, maybe, hey, we've been doing this for years. Of course you're going to contact SRI, or maybe not. So I referenced the data.gov, literally a paragraph. It's not a full page of document. It's just a quick definition. So the use of open data is sort of up in the air. We have it. It's typically refreshed, but not in real time. It's usually refreshed on month boundaries, like every 3 months. I think the license data was last updated in April, but it also has an update. So it has 2 updates that are shown, December 2023 and April 2024. So that's not totally clear, but the data that's available there is at least timestamped, and you can at least determine that it's curated, that it has somehow been checked for at least validity. Completeness is another story, as we've already covered. But the Open Data Project, by the way, that we have, has been around for at least a decade, and it was the reason that Code for Vegas started as part of Code for America to collaborate with the city of Las Vegas on the initial open data set, establishing it, deploying it, and now it's hosted at ArcGIS, which is a big GIS company, Geographical Information Systems. So ArcGIS is a company that does that. Their user interface is not amazing. It's useful, but it's probably off-putting to some. So we could make use of that data, but not make use of the platform it is on. We could make our own. That's why it's open. Data is great, so having all those data points is useful. A piece of information we could glean from the business license data is how many are missing. So once you have the data, you have the data points for each business license. You could say, well, some are expired, so some may be in the open data set, but should be removed. Maybe they're expired, maybe they're closed, and then there could be some that are missing. So filling in missing data is a little bit trickier because you don't know what you don't know. But the information would come from analyzing pieces of data. So some of that data would be open data, and some of it might be, as I was describing, some public data captured from business owners, or even, hey, that business is closed, kind of like what you see on Yelp, or I think sometimes on Google Local, part of Google Maps. So finding out that a business is closed is sometimes not completely obvious until you get there. But to know that a business was either closed or relocated, or some sort of status update, some of that could very easily come from the business itself, or could be hinted at by an interested but unaffiliated third party, right? Hey, that business is closed. So the data is great, but it does need to be sanitized, as we say, kind of remove the outliers, make sure it's not expired or stale data, make sure it's reasonably accurate and precise, and make sure that the missing data can be filled in eventually. And while raw data is not always useful for reasons I've just said, hey, this is raw data, it's not complete. So if you assume it's complete, that might have an impact on how you use it. The information that comes from it, the distribution of business licenses and what the businesses are per demographic region, right? So the geography of business licenses and the demographics in that geography, so a grid or a hex or something, might be interesting. It might be useful or interesting to analyze how certain populations and how certain communities are either good or bad for certain types of business, et cetera, et cetera. There's who knows? You can come up with anything you want. So information, good. Data, also good. Having only one, you should go for the data. The information can sometimes hide some things. So providing both, you could say, okay, information, that looks interesting. How did they get here? Oh, here's the equations, here's the methodology, here's the raw data that they used. Hey, I'm going to point out some missing data. Great, let's take another look at this analysis and see what's happening. So, for example, when you read a headline that says the Formula One was a great success, and you look at some of the data, you say, it wasn't a success for these businesses in this area, or these smaller businesses of this type in these geographies, right, near the racetrack, and then you can actually get direct feedback from the business owners That might be interesting. So when you look at the quote information as this was a great success, then you re-examine some of that data and you may draw a different conclusion. So maybe your information would look a little bit different, would look different or differently. It would appear, no, it would be different based on how you analyze that data. So having access to that data and having access to more data, not cherry picking, like if we only ask the resorts that made money, then even our data will suggest that everything was great. So any sort of gatekeeping or lack of due diligence to find a more complete, I think it's impossible to assure everyone that you have 100% complete data. But if you can be confident that you've reached, 95, 97% completion of your population survey, right? So you have that confidence in your data set. Like I said, my business is missing from the business license data set. Does that mean they're only off by one? Maybe they just miss me. Who knows? But maybe they're missing 10%. Maybe they're missing 25%. We don't really have a basis of comparison unless we can correlate official and crowdsourced, for example. So a lot of possibilities if we start taking some sort of public engagement with data as a feature of our smart city. So we could actually go dynamic. If we pluck some examples from those official expensive reports above, the ones I've already talked about, the PDFs, let's enable people living in the greater Vegas area, so no specific boundaries, to, for example, provide information about their entrepreneurial endeavor. So if they're a startup or a small business, they probably have some feedback to provide. It could be public data. They could add to the open data, maybe both. To enable them to be a part of a startup directory, publish news about a particular startup or a particular industry. So you could actually drill down into the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, which is not something our current local media is good at. You really need to be building a stadium or tearing down a resort or committing a crime, or all three, to get into our local news coverage, unless you're looking for a one-shot, 2-minute, lifestyle clip. The problem with those is that those other things, whether there's going to be a baseball team here, what it will be called, whether the stadium will work, which crime is being committed by whom and where, these are things that will get continuous coverage all the time. So even if you are a very successful startup, you pretty much have your one shot and then you will disappear under a pile of headlines about crises and fun economy. So what if we had the ability for the public, for the crowdsourcing of data about individual life here in Vegas, neighborhoods, travel routes, transit programs, whether it's getting around on our RTC bikes or taking a bus, or maybe there's a special access bus that you are able to use or need to make use of. Cars, road construction, always crazy. So what if I'm going to list off a few that I've written down here. Road repairs and maybe the impact of road repairs on a particular neighborhood. If you are impacted by tearing up streets to lay down fiber. I asked somebody about this one time because they said, my street gets torn up like every 2 years, and they keep saying they're redoing electrical or water, sewer, whatever it is. And they're like, they just keep tearing it up and doing it and then paving it and then re-tearing it up. So you could probably look through the public works budget line items in the open budget data in the City of Las Vegas open data portal, which I've linked in our links. But it'd be interesting to show on a map where road construction is taking place and then show that map over time. So you might see that over a 5-6 year interval, like why are the same places always seeing road construction? That might be interesting. So road construction, road repairs, postal and package thefts. These are not always reported to police. They are often reported to, so for example, I used to have a 75% package theft rate. I still laugh, but I'm crying on the inside. No, I'm laughing because it was Amazon. Usually, there were some other shippers, but it was at a time when I was traveling for work quite a bit. So I would try to time a delivery of essentials like, oh, I need, pick something. I need some toothbrushes and toothpaste. My travel stash is in need of a refresh. So I need some toiletry items or whatever. So I'd plan my delivery when I would be arriving back from town. So maybe I'd have 2 or 3 days. Then I'd have to get back to the airport and head somewhere else. So those deliveries became useful as part of this, tightened, constrained schedule. 75% theft rate was really problematic. But being that it's Amazon, they were willing. Their policy is generally liberal and customer leaning to say, okay, I don't know how this affects the merchants, by the way. It must be awful. I would say, hey, my package is not here. It was left by my door, but I already said I don't, leave them. Don't leave them at the door. Porch pirates and all that are a problem here in Vegas, as the postal inspector told me explicitly. Package theft is a problem in Vegas. So if you only report it to Amazon, of course, I was made whole. They would ship me the same item or items and, deliver it appropriately so it wouldn't be stolen. I didn't call the police. So not every postal or package theft or damage crime appears in the incident reports in the LVMPD open data datasets, for example. So if you actually know where package thefts are occurring, you cannot be anecdotal on Nextdoor, which is where people do this, but you can actually look at a map grid, and say, oh, these regions are experiencing higher rates of package theft. And you can do a little bit of math and you can try to determine essentially where the porch pirates might be coming from. There's a model that you could use to predict generally how far people are traveling to commit crimes from their home. So you can start to see if it's a donut shape and figure out that the people that are probably stealing things are in the middle of the donut. Not always completely accurate, but a starting point. You could do that with incident report crime data, but you can't do that with no data, right? So here again, you would have an opportunity to capture public data. You can tell your story on Nextdoor, and you can take your Nest? Your, what is it? Is it Nest? You can take your doorbell camera and, does anybody know this? Here's a picture of them stealing my package. Okay, that's great. But you can also put a marker on a map and say, I had a package theft on this day. Perhaps you have an exact time or a time window. Put a marker in there and you'll start to see markers appearing near each other, not only in space, but in time. And you can actually say, we are seeing patterns here. I don't see anyone doing that. We could do that. Hey, there's street racing going on in my neighborhood. By the time the police arrive, they're already gone. So keeping track of those locations over time, you might see that, hey, they're all appearing in a kind of a pattern, rotating. Like every day they're in the next spot, but there's 10, 20 spots possible. Unsafe pedestrian and bicycle areas. There is an open data set for streetlights. How about an open data set for near misses? It's wonderful to write down when someone gets hit by a car. You should do that. They should do that, whoever they is. But as a pedestrian myself, I sold my car many years ago, and I love it, not having to worry about catalytic converter theft, car burglaries, car theft, outright grand theft automobile theft. I don't have any of that to worry about. I make use of our public transit system. I walk a lot. I'm probably winning. If I really need a car, I can rent one. So all these are fine with me. That means as a pedestrian, I am always at risk of being hit by someone who doesn't pay attention turning left in an intersection, who doesn't pay attention turning into a uncontrolled T intersection, for example. These things happen all the time. So indicating on maps where there are unsafe intersections, or how about this? Well, do I have accessibility? I'll just say if you are in a wheelchair, crutches, walker, not completely ambulatory, maybe you are vision impaired, maybe hearing impaired. So any limitations you have in getting around, I see all the time people will place street signs on the sidewalk that would then be immovable and impassable if you can't, duck around it, or they're probably too heavy to move for some people. I see sidewalk closed signs placed hundreds of yards, if not fractions of miles, right? A quarter mile, half mile. You come upon no driveway, no ramp, sidewalk closed, and an impassable construction. Sidewalk segments are either missing or concrete is to be poured, fencing put around so it blocks sidewalks. If you tell someone in a wheelchair after they've wheeled down a sidewalk, I'm looking at you, Montecito Parkway. If you wait until they have traveled a quarter, maybe a third of a mile, and then you say, "Oh, sorry, you can't continue. You're gonna have to go back." It's funny because it's true, and it's truly stupid. So if sidewalk accessibility, if any issue that would impact bicyclists and pedestrians and anyone in between traveling however they get around, and it's not a car, that is stuff that should be on a map. It should be not a see, click, fix issue, which we'll get to in a moment, but it's something that could very easily be captured and made visible or usable as real data that can be turned into information for someone who might say, I will travel down the other side of the street, which does not have blocked sidewalks. Piece of cake. It just has to be done. Unsafe pedestrian and bicycle areas. So yeah, we should capture that information before. I have about four always risky and one or two temporarily risky due to construction areas. We may find that other people say, hey, yeah, I was almost hit by, and so if you see 10 markers at an intersection of near misses, but no one gets hit by a car, and this is a survivorship bias problem, this is how operations research was formed, the airplane with the bullet holes. So if you only look for intersections where people are killed or seriously injured by impacts with vehicles, you will miss out on all the opportunities to avoid those situations by noting where people have near misses but are not in the data sets because they were not hit by a car. Similar with bicyclists, and of course you can also be hit by a bicyclist. That's happened almost 3 times. 3 times almost hit by a person on a bike. So yeah, we can make use of this data and turn it into information like, ooh, that intersection is in need of additional lighting, or changing the timings on it's the reason you would focus on a particular intersection to analyze what is the causation of this correlation. You can focus on intersections that would otherwise not be in data sets. Yes, focus on intersections and other street features that could be a part of more collisions, injury, fatalities involving pedestrians, bicyclists, but don't leave out the ones that you could have fixed before the fact. Can be done. Internet and mobile data quality or availability, that's part of the BEAD program. So they had an internet access survey that the state did as part of their funding appropriations and whatnot from BEAD. So federal funds bending where that information just should be generally available, and it could be correlated against a lot of other things to see if internet access in certain regions is aligned with demographics, with the availability or the presence of business, different types of business, etc. So transit access, that's easy. If you are not in downtown Las Vegas, you may have 1 or 2 bus choices and they may run every hour, and they may not even show up sometimes. Sounds like the voice of experience. So if we actually survey riders, not every 10 years, but every 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 hours, a little bit more frequently, you might say, if you're trying to get from this part of the map to another part of the map, I don't need your home address. Just say which bus stop you're going to go to, from to, what's your origin, what's your destination. You got to get to work, you got to get to school, you got to get to a hospital for some medical, recurring medical treatments perhaps. So getting to your destination is important, but you only have 2 bus choices and they only run every hour. And maybe you have an accessibility concern, and maybe the buses are always full, so you can't even get on every bus because they're already, all kinds of things could be corrected or mitigated or adjusted if we ask the questions and we capture the data and then we analyze and we say, why are there so few buses servicing regions that have so many people that want to ride buses? I don't know if that's true, and neither does anyone else yet. Wild animal sightings. Once again, nextdoor.com. Hey, did anybody see a coyote? Did anybody see two coyotes? When you see more than two coyotes, run. But people have seen, anecdotally, coyotes, more scorpions, more snakes. Habitat encroachment is a real thing that could be analyzed, and data could be captured from these sightings. And it might even be useful to show the public on a map where habitat encroachment is taking place year over year, season over season. Correlate that with water availability, construction. Encroachment means that we're taking up space that was occupied by other species. So as there's less water, as there's less food, as there's more space being taken up by us, you may see more sightings. That should be visible. That data should be available. The analysis, the outcome, the resulting information would be, here is why you are seeing more of this coyote, snake, whatever. And here's where. So the data and the information would be a little bit closer together, but these are the sorts of things that are almost trivial once we have this infrastructure in place. Access to reliable electricity and water and other essentials. So who has access to what and where? Could be sort of steady state, like, hey, our power goes out all the time. We generally have access 80% of the time. We sometimes have brownouts, which is when the power grid can't deliver sufficient power to a particular region. Does that even happen? It's easy enough to ask. It might never happen. That would be good to know. Do we have that data? Probably. NV Energy has customer service issue data, maybe private, but that might correlate. So if you collect internet and mobile data, quality and availability of a region, access to electricity and water and other essentials in a region, correlate that with demographics, population demographics, cost of living in that particular region, how many businesses are there, what's the microeconomy like in that area. That might be interesting and useful to know. And it might be interesting and useful to know if we ask the people in that microeconomy and if they can look at the results and everyone else can. Totally doable. Missing pets. I have a whole thing on missing people, pets, and property. That will be another episode, but that could be an entire element of this platform, like an application built on this platform to address missing pets. I still see posts on light poles, literally paper taped to a light pole with a picture of a pet. We can do better. Smarter, smart city. That's where we're supposed to be living. An asset map with elements that are missing from the asset map described, not really defined, more described. So I would like to see the data that goes into the asset map they described in the report for Clark County. And I would like it to be updatable by the people, the personalities that should be a part of the asset map. So you should be able to add yourself to the asset map as a subject matter expert, a professional, licensed service provider of some sort, doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever. Maybe you are a tradesperson. Maybe you have an apprenticeship program. That's an asset to the community because you're helping with the future job market. Places, maker spaces, co-work spaces, any venue, coffee shop, library, etc., that enables collaboration and meetups and just general working or co-working. Resources that are available. Those maker spaces might have 3D printing, might have laser cutters, may have plotters, may have computers that you can borrow, etc. So the resources that are available to help elevate entire ecosystems as part of emerging startups, innovation, entrepreneurialism, etc. So our asset map could be far more useful than the one described in that very expensive SRI document. And it can be kept up to date as often as people would be willing to do so. And it doesn't have to be all at one shot. It could be anytime anyone wants to add or remove something, do so. Real problem reporting. So Clark County and more recently City of Las Vegas has outsourced customer or resident, I suppose, issue reporting to a third party called SeeClickFix. It's not a bad tool, literally SEE, SeeClickFix. fix. Now, I'm trying to remember one of Clark County or City of Las Vegas has like an indirect link to get to the page or the section of their service that is apropos to the region. I don't remember which one it is. C-Click Fix is a checkbox. It does things, and because it's a place where city and county staff, the appropriate agencies and organizations within the infrastructure here would check them. Like I've seen when I looked, not recently, a lot of derelict vehicles are listed. There could be fire risk or excess trash, litter. I've seen things like this are useful. So those will be routed to the correct, public works or law enforcement, code enforcement, etc. So not an awful platform, but I would really prefer to see local participation in a locally developed platform, in a platform that is locally developed and maintained, I suppose you could say, but not necessarily developed by 100% local. And so we'll get to this in a second, but it should be developed from a local perspective. That local may live in Las Vegas. They may live in San Diego or Fresno or Philadelphia or Montana, somewhere in Montana. I don't know. Montana's a huge place, so they may just live on 1,000 acres by themselves. But either way, when a company develops a product like this, they may be looking at it as they want to service their customer, which is City of Las Vegas or Clark County or wherever you might be, where they're using C-Click Fix where you are. They may not, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm just guessing, it could be. So their customer is the city or county agency, government. They may not be servicing the residents or the people as their primary. We're not the customer. We are the data. We're providing that crowdsourced information I was referring to previously. Not always the best way. If the customer is the community and the people in it, and they are the ones you're trying to serve, that's very different. Unfortunately, because it's a paid service of, the City of Las Vegas signs an agreement. It's my understanding that, they were considering it based on Clark County using it. So they sign some documents and probably hand over some money periodically. So the customer relationship is very clear there. It's who's paying for it. So my concern would be that the servicing of the customer comes first, not always the utility available to the people. And it's still the case that the people are supposed to provide the C-Click Fix, take a picture of a street sign on a sidewalk and send it off, and then who knows? So I think it can be done better. I think C-Click Fix deserves local competition in a particular locality, and then see what comes of it. And who knows? C-Click Fix may be better for it. And that's when you join forces and you make their service a part of an overarching platform about information sharing. We can do integration with existing official open data datasets, which I've referred to at the top level for the Greater Vegas region. You can integrate data from budgets and spending. That's one of the portals. There's administrative boundaries and business license data, et cetera, in the Geo Commons. And then, of course, crime. The LVMPD portal has more data in it than the crime mapping website did. It's far less visually appealing and far less, I will say, easy to navigate because there's just more data. And the tools used to navigate it are from ArcGIS. And ArcGIS is a company that really focuses more on the GIS professionals and not completely devoid of support for, but not necessarily focused on normal people accessing the data. So you can download a CSV file of data, comma separated value, and import it into your spreadsheet. They provide shape files, KML data, and if you don't know what those things are, you may not find the ArcGIS interfaces to these open data datasets to be inviting and friendly. So the data is there. We can take that data under the terms that it's published and integrate it in, correlate with, analyze causal relationships with other data that we capture. How cool would that be? We can capture and make use of real crowdsourced data to feed back directly to the crowd. So C-Click Fix data issue reporting at the intersection or at the sidewalk level is something that could be done in competition with C-Click Fix or in collaboration to make their product better and more localized, like really not by language, but by actually language is a thing too. So all of the features that we develop should be internationalized and localized. That is a problem already solved. We don't have to go by census data, which cities are probably want to do from a budgetary standpoint, but we can make use of a plethora of tools out there that will take one source language and translate it reasonably into any number of destination languages. I don't know if you know this, but Vegas has a lot of tourism from other places that don't necessarily speak English and Spanish. We can actually adapt to their language requirements so that they can get around and find things. True story. Getting on a bus if you don't speak one of the two languages. Hopefully there's a friendly rider that can help you. And I have often had that hat. So not a humble brag, just it's the way it is. Obviously you don't just look at someone and go, too bad. You no speak my language. That's horrible. So, and I've seen that happen. And so I at least try to point and I mean, you can point at their phone. You can pull up stuff on your own phone, and you can be as helpful as possible across the language barrier. But we can actually address not only language barrier, but accessibility. There's a whole YARIA standard for accessible digital interaction. We can build things to accommodate people with limited vision. Fun story, I was on an RTC bus with a fellow passenger, a frequent rider, thick glasses. I asked, he arrived after a totally botched schedule change. He said, "Oh, I'm glad I got here a little bit early. I didn't know they were changing the schedules." And I said, "Oh, it's on the app, but barely. The transit app from Montreal, not locally developed." And he said, "Well, oh, I can't see the app. I don't have, my vision is not good enough to see the app or make use of it. So I have to call the phone number for voice support for schedule information." And as luck would have it, one of the times when incompetence or just plain not getting it done worked out, the phone schedules were not updated. So the information he received was for the other time. And so he said, "Oh, well, I normally get there 10 minutes early." So the wrong information from the phone plus his normal routine left him at the bus terminal at the stop. It's a transit center, so it was multiple buses. Not a lot of buses, but more than one. Left him with like a 2-minute margin. So he arrived and the bus was just arriving. And he said, "Oh, normally I would have had about 5 minutes." So because of a comedy of minor errors, he did get on the bus. Otherwise, he would have missed the bus. The take-home lesson, the take-home message, the mobile application should be accessible to people with limited vision, because guess who's riding the bus? Sometimes it's people with limited vision. So that was just a disappointment, and it still haunts me to this day, because our open transit project at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation really should be getting more love than it has been. It remains on the list. It's an active project. We should be able to, what am I looking at here? So real community, we should be able to get crowdsourced data, feedback directly to the crowd, right? So we can do real community calendars. That's something I've been talking about a lot. We can do real event real event venue catalogs to connect meetups to places. If you've ever used meetup.com, I'm sorry. Waiting on a venue happens. Finding events by venue is impossible. Virtual events are difficult to weed out. So if we have a catalog of venues that are friendly to having meetups, so coffee shops, libraries, etc. Like, do you want to be in the catalog so that people can schedule meetups at your location? Yes, I would like to be there. I'd like to do that. Now we can automatically, they don't have to be a part of this. They've joined, they've opted in. A calendar can be created for a particular venue. They can even link to it. They can tell people about, "Oh yeah, we have events here all the time if you want to come down." Guess what? If people are coming to meetups in your coffee shop, they might be buying coffee. You should promote those meetups. So if we can close that loop and make real community calendars, not you must join 12 different groups on 5 different services. No. We can make actual standard calendars that everyone has been using for decades. Just little tiny companies like Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo, and who else? There's one more. Can't remember. These are big Apple. that little tiny one. These companies have been using iCalendar and CalDave servers, iCalendar streams for decades. We can make use of that for calendar sharing and community calendar access without having to sign up for various and pay in some cases for various things like Meetup. Stop using Meetup. Public health feedback loops. So if we do have an outbreak of illness of any kind, it could be any number of smaller scale illness outbreaks, could be food poisoning. So we can make that data available rather than making it something you have to hunt down. It can be a part of a sort of a weather report or a dashboard for a particular part of your local community, your neighborhood. Hey, are people within 5 miles of me feeling sick? Maybe a little food poisoning reaction. And if you start to see on a map or some other visualization or data report, like, yeah, there's in the last 24 hours, 12 people who've been, that's good information to know. How would you find that otherwise? So community sharing of this sorts of data. And by the way, this is not a Yelp review where you rant about the guy with the, no. This is my current situation as data, not as anecdote. Connecting projects to trade shows and conventions. When you're here visiting as a tourist or a convention attendee or otherwise, you should have some idea what might be interesting so that you don't, and I've had this conversation countless times, so you don't find yourself saying, I hate coming to Vegas. I just want to get out of here. Well, what do you do when you're not at the trade show? I just go back to my hotel. I hate it here. Oh, did you know that there's a fill in the blank? Did you know that there's there was somebody here for CES? And I said, oh, if you go to the Arts District, they have a thing. He said, you had me at Arts District. I didn't even know you had one of these here. So knowing is half the battle. And then if there's something timely going on that might be interesting, which, by the way, should be happening already. If we have an innovation district with consumer electronic oriented innovation, there should be events that correlate with the Consumer Electronics Show, which is like the biggest show here. SEMA, anything with cars, automotive related. NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters, should connect all content creators who make use of cameras and microphones and studios. Even though they're small players, they are customers of these companies, especially if we're going to be Hollywood 2.0, which we're not. Make our many, many local content creators and influencers more easily found. I just kind of touched on that, but if you are making YouTube videos about events and venues like restaurants and bars and new resorts, resort amenities, a new collection of suites, a special pool deal. That's what people do here quite frequently. Life in Vegas, getting around Vegas, different events. If you went to EDC, if you're going to a trade show, but you're here, you're a local content creator. These people are legion. There's tons of them. But how do you find, like, hey, I'm visiting Vegas this week. I would like to know which restaurants are cool. I have some business associates. I want to go to a cool, whatever kind of place. Where do you start looking? Maybe Yelp. But if we can gather the work that people do to create appealing content, videos and otherwise, they have a personal monetary interest in that. So they're already making useful and interesting content. Making it discoverable in the context of somebody visiting or even somebody who lives here is doable. So making sure you collect things like, oh, here's a new restaurant. Here are the 5 people that have talked about it in the last 3 months. So it's brand new. It just opened 3 months ago. And here are people talking about it and how great it is. And there's visualizations of food. And here's a link to their website and all that. So you can actually help with discovery, not only of the content creators, but of the things that they're talking about. And that I think helps both. So we can connect the object that they are talking about, presuming that they are the subject. Maybe the subject is the restaurant or whatever. But if we can connect the content, the creation, the creators of the content, and their content, and the destination or the service or the event in question for people visiting or even for people who live here, that is a huge value add. Now we're not allowing algorithms. We're servicing needs with the work already done and already monetized. It's already, that's like low hanging fruit. That may be one of our introductory tools that we launch with. Many more, could be anything. I've talked about, focus. So what you do is you take your data that you've collected, open data, public data that you collect from the public, from the crowd. Then you build applications that draw from the data as needed for display or for analysis or for integration with other data, right? You may want to have road construction, parking, an event, and coffee shops. You may like, oh, it'd be cool if we could combine those all into like, I just want to know which things are close to each other and how to get around. Why can't you do that? Well, you can, or you will. A lot of things I'm talking about right now are blue sky, but they are all the motivation and the examples of why the motivation is what it is. We can integrate with external services. So mobile vendor discovery, for example. I've talked about food trucks already today. So you should be able to figure out where food trucks are as a matter of course. It shouldn't be, well, some food trucks are using one service and some are using another, and nobody talks about where First Friday is and what that even is. And it's not a place, it's a time on a calendar. And what about this other event? And it's just a total mess. And I'm speaking, this is the voice of experience. So you can actually help the mobile vendors. You can help the people who are fans. You can help the people who are curious. Like, oh, I've never tried Ethiopian food and there's a new Ethiopian food truck. Cool. So you can help with all that. Portable variety and social activation are real things. They can be a part of elevating communities, just making for a different thing on a Thursday night or whatever. So it's actually a quality of life and a neighborhood activation and so on feature. It can be a part of our information sharing platform by integrating data from things like Street Food Finder, Food Trucks In, Roaming Hunger, Best Food Trucks, etc. Maybe I haven't been working on something for too long and I should finally deploy it. Existing news sources. So we have several local media gatekeepers who report on the stadiums and the murders and stuff. Not to be left out, but certainly could be a part of a graph of locations and times and events. You could connect news reporting on Formula One construction impact on local business with survey data from the local businesses themselves to tourism data week over week. You can actually make use of real data to create informative views on correlation and causation analysis of these different pieces of data. We can use small business websites and link to them. So rather than writing articles and drawing you to our website, like we're not going to write articles, we're not going to write reviews, we're going to point you to the websites that the business, you're looking for a particular new restaurant, do they have a website? Yes, here's their website. Now it's their responsibility to service the customer that they might get as a result of being found. So we're not in the business of intercepting customers for the purposes of redirection or other, although we may be ad driven. So that would be something. The precise monetization scheme could vary and should vary based on the particular platform. By the way, the approach that we're taking is not unlike the Yahoo property approach. Yahoo was based in Sunnyvale, where I was. Yahoo would acquire different web properties. Yahoo Automotive was their most profitable sort of platform component. So that was actually Yahoo Automotive. But Hot Jobs, when they acquired Hot Jobs, they left it as Hot Jobs. You could get to Hot Jobs from Yahoo, but they didn't try to rebrand it and bring it into the family and change things. They said, this already works. Let's integrate your services into what we're doing. And they did that with a number of platforms. So not exactly the same thing, but we definitely don't want to try to duplicate effort or copy content. We want to make sure that people find the primary sources wherever possible. Why do I have to tell you about a restaurant? The restaurant should tell you about it. Reviews are different, but as far as, I'm looking for a really good restaurant. Well, here are some content creators that have done a lot of work to bring you attractive, well-produced content and commentary. And here's the website for the business in question. Hey, do they have gluten-free options? Do they have, that's another set of features we can talk about. But yeah, we don't need to add to confusion and try to capture and get between customers that are intending to go to places. We can make their paths shorter, or we can make them, we can help them to be more informed, when they're trying to make a decision about what to do, where to go, where to eat, what to drink, where to go see a show, etc., by connecting people with real content creator, influencer information, locations, travel routes, etc. So there's a lot of data floating around that people are not making use of. They're only trying to direct people to destinations and trying to capitalize on that. I've already talked about some mobile apps and so on that try to do this. It's a hard problem that can be very confusing. It's a fire hose of options. Like, here are all of the restaurants. Good luck. Well, I'm looking for pizza. Okay, here's all the pizza restaurants. Good luck. We can try to be more. Hey, guess what a smarter smart city might do? Try to be more helpful in more languages. So and then any compatible public data sources. So the more we can make use of work that people have already done, and of course attribute to them, you link directly to them, right? So it's not like, oh, we just copied the content off your website and republished it here. No, you can use of open graph data, which is, decades of that on news feeds on Facebook and whatnot. Like, here's a picture, here's the title of the element from a third-party website. Could be a news article, could be the menu page from a restaurant. It could be anything. But rather than duplicating their content, you link directly to it. This is not new. But you make that the first best practice, not trying to host yet more anecdotes, yet more content creation. We should try to make use of the content creation already happening, already working. And that includes small business and entrepreneurs and innovators and school programs and nonprofits who already have websites, who don't need more indirection. Just send them to the website. And hopefully this will encourage people like me who have website projects that have been languishing. Will start to say, oh, I should get my website published. I shouldn't rely on a horrible LinkedIn page that nobody visits because the algorithm is not favorable. Own your presence. We're coming to the end, I promise. Going super local. So the project that I'm talking about, the MyMuni project, was actually one component of several. It used to be called My Vegas. So the Innovate for Vegas Foundation has an open source community elevation project, MyMuni. Used to be called My Vegas. The smart social component is about the data capture and correlation and causation and analytical components. So it's not social media, it's a smart social component about gathering and analyzing data from society. So crowdsourcing, if you like, but what you do with that data and enabling that component of the platform, one of the projects. And then there's the open data capture platform, which then takes some of this social data and tries to fit it in with some sanitization, right? So get rid of the outliers and then try to get bogus data out. And you can add to the open data data sets or to public data. So we'll treat them as similar from this perspective. And then we can tile this together under the MyMuni and Welcome projects. Welcome is MyMuni for visitors, and neither MyMuni nor Welcome should be Vegas-centric. The data, Vegas-centric. The platforms should be community or locality agnostic, so they can be used in other places. Surely we can test things here, but they should be useful anywhere, right? Nobody built Facebook for Vegas. That would have been silly. They built it for college students, and then they grew it from there. So we can commercialize the open source project, which we are doing, which is absolutely not new. So we close the loop on, I used to talk about this more, the Innovate for Vegas Labs, which would be deploying projects as they become deployable so that people can use them. And if we deploy the Labs project as a for-profit or as a commercial venture, an arm's length away, as they say, from our nonprofit public charity, we can actually monetize and actually compensate some of the volunteers who've spent their time. So rather than working for free all the time, they can be a part of the return on investment of their time. But our model from the charity standpoint is everybody volunteers their time. So how do you compensate that time? Well, if you are actually serious and you want to be a part of this, when it becomes successful, you capitalize on it. So we are not paying people for blue sky. We're paying people who really care about elevating their communities. by deploying the projects when they're ready and then reaching out to our communities and offering a real value proposition that they can participate in. It sounds weird, but it's absolutely not uncommon. This is how a lot of open source projects actually function. Linux Foundation. So Linux started first, the kernel. It appears in everything. It powers most computing that people use. If it's not in your pocket or on your desk, it's probably running Linux somewhere in the cloud, etc. So that started off as one person in Finland making a Usenet news post and seeing what happens. Now there's the Linux Foundation, and how many billions of dollars revolve around this project that is worked on by thousands, probably more, of people around the world. So these are not small plans, although our plans do have small beginnings, to quote an Aliens movie. So we can commercialize the open source project. We can deploy the projects in progress from the foundation and build a business model around the deployment to make civic volunteer time valuable to the community mostly, because hopefully the volunteers already valued their own time and they've chosen to spend it on this particular project. The long tail suggests that that will come back to them. It will be valued by the people who receive value, who say, oh man, this has really changed the way that I interact with the transit system here, how I look at my community and what needs to be fixed and what's broken and how business is conducted here. And who knows what we come up with. By designing projects on the foundation side and a model on the business side that can provide that ROI to volunteers while also elevating communities, and by reaching out to other civic volunteer organizations to participate in developing a platform that is community agnostic. That is, we're not building the My Vegas, we're building the My Muni platform. That was a conscientious rename to indicate that this is not a Vegas-centric thing. The data will be Vegas-centric. Maybe a website, which I've already talked about, the In Las Vegas website, will be Vegas-centric. The underlying project that powers this site, it would be like saying WordPress. Well, my site is not WordPress. It's whatever my blog is or my business. Right, so it's powered by WordPress, but it's your brand, your data, your customer interactions. So that's essentially the point of the My Muni project, is to make a platform for information sharing at community scale. We're not trying to take over the world. We're trying to make our communities better. That's our purpose statement. Trying to make our communities better by making information available in useful ways that make for a smarter, smart city. The Greater Vegas area already thinks it's a smart city, so let's assume that that's correct and we'll make it smarter. By being relative, it doesn't really matter where the starting point is. We're just going to be smarter. So an informed public, informed with good and correct information and the ability to contribute to that good and correct information, will be smarter. However you choose to define smarter. So if we can reach out to other civic volunteer organizations, which may have some time on their hands since the end of December 2023, no thanks to Code for America, then we may have good ideas, certainly some development time. Not everything is code, so it could be making platforms that are internationalized and localized to work with the languages spoken in different communities, different places, and accommodating different specific needs, and maybe in a modular fashion, developing particular applications that fit into the platform that are appropriate for different parts of the country. And those may not be completely unique, but they may vary. So things that will work. We don't really get a lot of snow in Southern Nevada, but there may be a very particular application for snowed in road. We do have snow at Mount Charleston, so I'm not discounting them. But when snow impact, or snow and weather conditions, harsh weather conditions impact school days, transportation, electricity and water, visitation, right? Airports, flights. There may be a whole collection of things that are geared towards very cold weather. We have very hot weather. Phoenix has even hotter weather. That's where I used to live. So there are ways to focus on particular needs of particular communities, but guess what? Not every community needs to be off on their own, developing their own vertical thing. The mistake I think that's been made over the last couple of decades was assuming, instead of doing something useful and that works where I am, or for who I am, or for who my customers are, I'll just rely on Facebook. I'll hand everything over to Facebook. So somewhere between I must do everything full custom and for myself, and I'm going to hand over everything to a third party who doesn't care about me because they're a public company with a fiduciary responsibility to anyone but me. Somewhere in the middle is like, oh, if I take responsibility for my online presence, but I make sure that I am discoverable in useful ways to people who live here or people who are visiting, I can benefit without handing over everything, including my customers' privacy, to a disinterested third party that's getting rich on my effort. I'll step off my soapbox now. So the open source platform that serves communities elsewhere, thanks to the volunteer efforts by those people from those other elsewhere places, and a combination of technologies that already work from years gone by: email, RSS syndication, RESTful APIs, internationalization, localization, RDF, semantic web, and information graphs. And then modernity, GraphQL, gRPC, maps and charts, useful visualizations, very, very sensitive use of dynamic user interface elements. So it's not all about animation and shiny. It's more about utility in this case. An activity pub, which is powering a decentralized social networking infrastructure adopted by many, including Innovate for Vegas will have a activity pub platform. So if we integrate activity pub, we can interoperate with a lot of different services. Maybe we can even interoperate with different versions of the My Muni project if they're deployed in other places. So we can connect at the locality level, not through a centrally planned corporate entity like major news outlets, big tech, etc. So we can be like local people interacting with other local people. And we can build a working starting point for more civic volunteer-driven innovation and not pretend that innovation is local, but we can also show and tell here in Vegas with our 40 million, approximately, annual visitors, which is another piece of data that's published on the LVCVA website, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, with very little in the way of backup. It's information posted, but not data. So we don't even know if that information is legitimate. Is it really 40 million? How many people really came for the Formula One race? Displacing how many other people and costing who how much, etc., etc. You can already hear my voice is about to I think my voice actually already ended the show. So I'm going to have to wrap it up here. I've been talking for way too long. This might be one of the longest solo episodes I've done across any of my shows. I had a lot to say. This is a big project. I'm hoping that we can identify a few people that might find it interesting to contribute to. In the meantime, I should get back to work. So thanks for listening. As always, visit buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo, DANHUGO. Find out more about more of my audio productions, any other productions coming along, projects. You are under no obligation to spend any money, but if you do, it will go towards coffee. I should go make some right now. I know what you're saying. I will make tea first. Thank you very much for listening, and take it easy. Watch this space for more project updates.